You have all seen the movie Cool Runnings, but did Hollywood get it right? Today I'm talking to the man who knows, because he was there. You might not know him by name, but I'm pretty sure you know him when I tell you who he is. His name is Dudley Stokes, and he is the one and only bobsleigh pilot from Team Jamaica 1988. Dudley, where do we catch you? What are you doing right now there? Where are you?
I am home,
Okay.
which is the island of Providenciales in the Turks and Caicos, close to where I was actually born many years ago, and just catching up on some admin stuff, doing some work, and working on what's to come in the next few months.
And do you follow the Olympics, which are on right now in Italy?
Yes, I do. Well, fairly closely for the bobsleigh, but I also have interest in a few other sports, the skiing to an extent.
I want to talk about history, of course. And of course, I want to talk about the movie. But when you think back to I think it was 87, a year before the Olympics, when did you hear the first time that some people had the idea to found a Jamaican bobsleigh team? Can you remember when it was and who told you that there was this cunning plan?
Yes, absolutely. It was in August of 1987, and I was on leave from the Jamaican Army, where I was a helicopter pilot there, and I was on leave to celebrate my second wedding anniversary, having missed the celebration of the first. And it
Oh,
didn't, yeah, that caused strains. So I was sure to put in, and I got leave, and I was home with my wife, and the phone rang, and it was my commanding officer from the Air Wing who told me that there would be trials for a bobsleigh team this coming Saturday, and I was to be there. And he didn't get into any more details. I had no idea what bobsleigh was, what the trials would entail, nothing at all.
at this
So
time,
that's how I came to
at,
hear about it.
at this time, nobody could say, "Oh, I know it from the movie."
Yeah, no. It took me, it took me the better part of a day to find out what the sport was. This is pre-internet. Even cable TV was just sort of getting into being. So I had to call on the landline, pre-cell phones, call on the landline
Yeah.
to friends in America, and I kept asking and asking till one of them knew somebody who knew about it. And then I called that person, and they taught me through the sport, which I thought was quite a crazy idea to begin with.
What
Nobody
was your
spoke about the Olympics in August. They didn't mention that part, but that was always the plan.
so? What was your background? You already told us that you were a helicopter pilot. So was this pilot thing already something because you got commanded there, or was there any athletics background?
Yes, well, there was some athletics. I come from a family that is very athletic. But when my brother beat me 2 out of 3 for 30 meters, I was 9, he was 8, I concluded I wasn't fast. So I gave up on athletics. I started playing cricket until the cricket ball hit me on my thumb. So I gave up cricket, and I ended up as a footballer for much of my career, central defender, right-sided defender, and played to a fairly high level. I played at military academy where I went to at Sandhurst, and then I played for the army in Jamaica a little bit. And it was through this that the gentleman who had the idea for the Jamaica bobsleigh team, George Fitch and William Maloney, went to Colonel Ken Barnes, who was in charge of sports in the army, and his son John Barnes played, he was probably the best of his generation in England in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s. But so Ken was in charge of sport, and I asked him for some athletes. And then at the end of it, they say, we need somebody reasonably athletic with proven hand-eye coordination to teach to drive the bobsleigh. And Ken, who knew me from football in the army, said, "Yeah, I have the guy for you." And he called my commanding officer at the air wing and told him to tell me, and hence the phone call that I got. So this was, not a voluntary situation.
Okay. Ah,
When
okay.
Colonel suggests something to you in the army, it's,
Then you have to do
you
it.
you have to do it. Yeah.
You have to do it. What model of helicopters did you fly at this time?
Mostly Bell equipment, the what
UH-1?
was popularly known as the Hueys. So I never flew the one. I flew the two, which was the twin,
Okay.
and I flew the Jet Ranger, which is
Okay.
the very
The
small
most,
single
I think
engine.
it's the most built helicopter on this planet. The
The
206?
Yeah, the 206, probably. Probably. You're probably right about that. And then I flew a thing called the 222, which was also a Bell helicopter, which
Okay.
was a little more exotic than the others.
But I read that this is part of the real story too, and we know it from the movie, that this pushcart thing. What did
It's a
these
real
push?
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real thing in Jamaica. And it grew out of the people who sort of did the last mile in logistics from the farms in the country to the
Okay.
markets in the city. In pretty much every big city in Jamaica will have this. So the trucks will come to a point, and then they won't be able to necessarily maneuver into the city centers and so on.
Because
And
the roads were too narrow or what?
the roads are narrow and they're crowded. They're
Okay.
occupied by a lot
I
of
see.
other traffic and so on. So the
Okay.
vendors would come out with these trucks that they had literally built from wood and wheel bearings for the wheels and covered them with old rubber. And they push them
Okay.
out to the truck, they load them up, and then they were able to maneuver into the marketplace. And so that's how it started. And then it expanded to people actually using these cards to go to different spots to sell, a little bit of competition. So they try to find a good intersection or somewhere to park. And the police, as you can imagine, had trouble with these carts. And then some bright policeman whom I don't know, but he came up with the idea that we should use this problem as a community outreach. And since these guys are pushing these cars, they're running away from the police, they're racing here and there.
So they were
Let's
quick.
start a race. Yes, this actually was started by the police force in Jamaica. This race which went around the entire island, and then once a year in Discovery Bay on the north coast, sponsored by the bauxite company at the time. Then you would have the champions of the island meeting for a grand race, and this still goes on.
So the army and the Jamaican police were very much involved in, founding a bobsleigh team.
Absolutely.
So how short was actually the preparation, or when did you start this program where you were from your commander commanded into? So when did the mission start?
So we had the trials in August, sort of mid-August, and then a team was selected, 5 guys. We went in early September to Lake Placid, where there was no ice on the track yet. Really, it was just being put on. No, it wasn't even being put on. The track was dry, but we went there to meet our coach, Howard Seiler,
Yeah.
who would have the final decision. And he had a big barbecue, and there was a lot of meat, lot of beer and so on. And he talked to everybody, and he decided who he thought had what it would take to go. We actually got on the ice in the Olympic arena there, where the miracle on the ice from
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
1980, where
Yeah,
the
yeah.
college boys beat the Russian national team.
Yeah.
So we got on that, and we pushed the bobsleigh, and we did slide around and spend a lot of time on our backsides.
So,
But
okay, let me repeat before
yeah,
I get this wrong. So your first contact in pushing a bob was on the legendary ice where the miracle took place.
absolutely.
I didn't know this. How
Yeah.
great is this? Okay.
Yes, so that happened. So then we left, and in October we went to Calgary, which is would be the Olympic track, and So we arrived in Calgary on I think the 17th of October, infamous day, Black Monday, which is when the largest stock market crash up to then happened. And George Fitch, who was funding the team, lost all his money in that crash. And but that's the day we arrived in Calgary for the first time to go on ice, with the Olympics being, of course, in February. So you would imagine this was an ambitious schedule.
Absolutely. And you know what? I can remember that day because when it really was in October in 1987, I was still in the East German Army, and I heard about this market crash on the East German news show.
Yeah.
So that was actually the day where you did your first runs in Calgary.
Well, we arrived.
You arrived. Okay. You arrived.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we arrived that day. Yeah.
Okay. I did not know this at the time.
It's amazing that you were in East Germany and this news was there as well. Although, I mean, it was quite a moment for everybody. People thought you remember 2008 and various things, but 1987 was for people around. Youngsters like us at that time were really impacted.
Yeah, they always told us in the East German news how bad capitalism was. So that was one of the reasons they told us that one.
Yeah, so that's probably
they didn't tell us about the good things. They just told us the bad things. Yeah.
The markets crashed.
Okay. Yeah. So how was your first run? Where did you start? I mean, do you go to top in Calgary, or do you start somewhere down?
No. We started at the junior start with 3 or 4 curves, and we sat in the bob, and we just did that a couple of times just to get the feel to see how the thing worked. Then we went to the half, and we did that maybe 10 times, and a little bit more speed, and at the bottom and so on, and understanding pressure and steering, and then the ladies start, and then the following day we went to the top.
Okay.
Or I think maybe one at the ladies start, then we went to the top, and that was a different story.
Okay.
So you can well imagine.
How was it? Did you survive the first one?
Yeah, but through no fault of my own. We were going through it was nice and easy. The transitions were easy. The pressure was not too much in all the lower starts. Nobody was really instructing us how to put on our helmets. I had my helmet comfortably done up, which I'd say comfortably done up. And so we got to the top, sat in, we went, 1, 2, 3. Then we came out of curve 4, and I realized that this was a different game. And when we hit curve 7, my helmet flew up over my eyes, and I didn't see anything else until I heard the brake coming on at the end. So it gave me a false impression, and I thought to myself, how hard can this be?
Yeah. So you have done it blind on day 1 from top.
Yeah, but not a good idea. So
you didn't want to take your hands off the D-rings to correct your helmet.
No. I was hanging on for dear life.
Calgary. So when were you guys for the first time seriously talking about the Olympics?
Well, the guys who started it always had that in mind. George Fitch started it, said, we're going to get a team, we're going to go to the Olympics, we're going to make a splash, and I'm going to have a movie done. That was his idea from the very beginning. Very, very entrepreneurial pair of guys. So but they didn't share all that information with us straight away. They rolled this out slowly. But while we were in Calgary, we realized that here we are, we're starting on the Olympic track and so on, the only thing, because we weren't complete dunces either. These guys were intent to go to the Olympic Games come February.
Yeah.
And then when we were told now that we'd have to leave Calgary and go to Innsbruck in Austria and do some training ahead of the World Cup race, because we had to finish that race. Why? In order to qualify for the Olympic Games. So this was before anything run, if you can imagine. We were the first team that came up to bobsleigh who were not always in bobsleigh. In those days, if
Yeah.
you are a member of the FIBT as it was at the time, the
Yeah.
International Federation, then you went to the Olympics
Yeah.
because there were like 12 active members and then there were 18 and it went up and down.
Yeah. That is the next question. Was there
But
already a federation in Jamaica?
yes, they had formed one
Okay.
because this idea was already in their heads from 1985, 1984,
Okay.
1985 to
Okay.
do a team, but they always thought they would do a summer team.
Yeah.
So they have gone to the Jamaica Olympic Association and said they want to go to the Olympics. William Maloney wanted to march in an opening ceremony. Of course, George wanted his movie. And
Yeah.
so the head of the association at the time, a guy named Mike Fennell, told them that, listen, you guys, you have to find a sport Jamaica doesn't already do. Then you have to form a federation to do it, get all of your permissions and so on, join the international federation for that sport. Then you have to get a team and compete, qualify for the Olympics, then you can go. After a year of searching, they realized that it wouldn't be possible in the summer games. Jamaica has a federation at least for every summer Olympic sport you can imagine.
Yeah.
And we have rowing, we have equestrian, everything is done in Jamaica for the summer games.
Yeah.
So it was while seeing a sports show on TV, which included the pushcart derby, that they made the connection, back to the Sarajevo Winter Olympics and the bobsleigh there, which was quite a race. I don't know how much you'd know of it, but it had made an impression on them. And then they said, bobsleigh. And then they called the American Federation, who said, yeah, speed and power at the start, you guys have that. We'll send some guys down and we'll help you. So they had an ulterior motive because bobsleigh at the time was marginal as an Olympic sport because of national participation. It was probably the lowest participation sport in the Olympics. So that was kind of the carrot for teams. So America pushed it, and eventually the FIBT, after coming up with rules on the spur of the moment, at the end of December, we finished the race in Eagles.
Okay.
35th and 36th. And
that was a real World Cup race.
World Cup race, full-on World Cup race. Yeah.
Okay. You were happy, and you must have been happy that it was Eagles and not Altenburg.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we had been there for like a month,
Yeah.
So again, we started at the bottom and we went up. So I was confident of finishing the race when we went into it. But it was a shock to see, sort of the national teams roll up. Because this was, you can imagine, from the level that we were at, and even sliding with some club sliders and in a few sub races, regional races, and so on. It's all well and good. But when the big boys come to town, that's a different sport again.
Yeah. Was that the first time that you thought, it might work, this plan with the Olympics?
When we qualified is when I started to believe. But and when we were told we were qualified, because remember, this was still an open book. So every step of the way, then some kind of new thing was brought up. But by the end of December, this is now where you have to declare to the IOC what's happening and so on. So they just said these guys can't get down. They won't be the worst people to have ever gone to the Olympics in bobsleigh. So we let them in. But we were sort of in a bubble because we weren't seeing much news. All the news was in German. They can imagine. So at the time, so we had no idea what the promotional side of bobsleigh. We're just trying to meet a few criteria and survive a race to go to the games. And then we were told before New Year's that, all right, you guys are in, and that's when we knew.
So how did you spend the time between this World Cup race where you qualified or met the qualification criteria And the games. So what did you do in this time as an almost Olympian?
Craziness. So the powers that be have been told that when you go into the Olympics, you need to do a pre-Olympic training camp. So we said, fine, we do a pre-Olympic training camp. We have to do it somewhere close. I said, well, you can't get on Calgary track anymore. The Olympics, it's closed to sliding. So I said, fine. So I was expecting to go back to Eagles, and I said, no money for that. So we ended up in Lake Placid.
Okay.
No, this is the old mile.
The
Not the old
track.
mile, but the old mile. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I crashed in curve 1 3 consecutive times on that track.
When you
And
crash on, I thought when you crash on curve 1, they name it after you.
It probably is, as I had 3 crashes in a row. Then I got through it, and the training was going well. So there were 2 of us. Sammy Clayton was the other driver, and there was myself, and then number of guys from the army pushing. And halfway through, we were to be there for the whole month of January, and about mid-January, Sammy Clayton knocked on my door at 9 o'clock one night, and he said to me that he was leaving. And I said, "What happened?" And he was doing all right. Sammy had some adventures, including in Eagles. He went into the Chrysler Eagles, didn't steer, went up to the hoarfrost on the top, and exited the Chrysler backwards. And then when the brakeman looked up and saw the driver looking over his shoulder driving, he slammed on the brakes. And we were not popular with the track crew.
No.
Oh
shit.
But
oh my God.
But he was all right in Placid. He was going down, but I think he had personal issues, and I never saw him again. He left. But now this created, we've just had 1 team, and whereas we were going forward to the Olympics with a spare person, 5, now with only 2 people could participate. We might take 3. And Devon Harris came to me the following night with the idea, so why don't we do a 4-man that way?
Hang on. I completely forgot to ask. So we were talking until this moment about the 2-man.
Yeah, only 2-man.
And now you were talking or started to talk about a 4-man.
Yeah,
at this time.
The idea was presented to me that if we do a 4-man, everybody would be able to compete.
Okay.
And
when and where was this?
This is about 15 January in Lake Placid, middle of January, negative 20 on the warm day.
Okay.
And, so we had a call. Sat down, we called George. They want to explain thing from the other athlete's perspective. I said, I'm prepared to try it. Let's see if we can manage it here. We'll be good. And then he said, all right, let me see if I can get a sled. And he arranged a sled, and we started 4-man in Lake Placid in what they call the tourist section. So the track opened in the afternoon for tourist bobs.
Yeah.
And then we got in on the end of the tourist descents and started from the half. And the first day we did 20 descents. It was negative 25. And I was just determined to figure out what was going on and drive this 4-man. And the guys froze to death in the back. I mean, they were shattered at the end of it. But, I just loved the 4-man from the first day. Never had a problem. Went to the top the next day, no worries. And then we started running off. And we had a good 2 weeks of 4-man training, except for the last day when I was getting too relaxed. And on the exit curve in the exit in Lake Placid is a bit like 13 to 14 now in Eagles, which I have just been to, and you have to hit the wall. The question is how hard, and I hit the wall hard, and it broke the frame of the sled. So now, we were going to the Olympics. We planned to race a 4-man sled, but only Jamaica knew about this, and a very small part of people. But we didn't have a 4-man sled.
Okay.
So
you had a 2-man. You went to the Olympics. You wanted to take part in the 4-man. You didn't have a sled yet.
We didn't have a sled, and we didn't have any permission. We didn't know how it would go. But this was, the genius of George Fitch, because he was a real operator on things. So when we got to the games, he started working on things, but we started training in the 2-man, going for the race there. And we didn't know really till the last day of the 2-man that we were allowed into the 4-man. And George, that was probably, of all the things that happened, that was the most audacious, outrageous thing of the whole story of Jamaica Bobsled in 1988.
Okay.
Never been in a 4-man race. Never. To this day, I haven't gotten like a satisfactory explanation from George as to how that happened. But it happened. The 2-man race in '88 was a very tough race. The second day was cancelled for a snowstorm, with me sitting in 16th place, which I was quite satisfied at the time, ahead of Hoppe, which caused the Germans to raise an objection, and the day was abandoned. So we had to come back on a third day and do the final 2 runs. I ended up like 35th again. Yeah. So, but mentally exhausted, physically exhausted. It was a tough week and a tough race. And then after I just said, all right, in the 4-man, we have a day off and then training. So we went to the 4-man. Fortunately, already we had pioneered the ice push training in Lake Placid by ill-advisedly taking our 4-man to the Lake Placid lake, which we were assured was frozen over. And we stuck it on there and started pushing it on the ice.
Okay, hang on. So you wanted to do some practice on ice. Obviously, there was no ice house yet. There was, I'm pretty sure, the ice rink where they played hockey.
We wouldn't have been allowed on that. No,
didn't give you any permission. So you wanted to go on a lake.
Yes.
With the bobsleigh.
Yeah.
And it had enough ice.
It did, because we're still here.
Okay, yeah.
But as one of our team members had a conversation with his mother and told her, his mother lived in the States, told her that, he was on the lake pushing the bobsleigh.
Yeah.
And she said, you're going to drop through, and freeze and drown. And he said, no, man, the lake's solid and so on. And she said, the famous word, she said, that is what they always say.
Yeah.
They always say it's frozen. And then push.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. I mean, to jump in the 4-man, it's not easy. So you could practice it on a lake.
On the lake, yeah. So we got some ice push training.
Okay.
And then we turned up in Calgary. And we went to training the first day, which the first one was rough. The second one was okay. We're all sitting in and so on. But it was the first time that Caswell Allen had actually been down, descended in a bobsleigh. And I think no one from various research that has gone on, including putting my book together, the Jamaican Bobsled Captain, that there probably was nothing physically wrong with Caswell, but he was not interested in sliding again. And so now we were in a real problem because now we have
a 4-man team has normally 4 people.
So we're now a 3-man team.
Okay.
So here the story gets weirder now, Ron. So my brother, who had beat me when I was 9 and he was 8, at the age of 18 entered the elite ranks of sprinting in the world with 10-second, very low 10-second times and so on. And
he probably was the fastest from all of you guys, but he was not a member of the team yet.
No, he wasn't. And but he was on a track scholarship at the University of Idaho, which is in Moscow, Idaho, which is 8 hours south of Calgary. So he drove up with his girlfriend. They had a program where, I guess it happens in many Olympics, but where families put up team members and so on. So my wife stayed with her family and I arranged, and he came up with his girlfriend and he stayed with her family. He came up on the weekend of the 2-man race. He watched a race. Then he was going to stay through the week of the 4-man. He actually wasn't planning to, but when he got there, we told him we're racing the 4-man as well. So he said, oh, okay, I just missed this week of class, which that was a decision that pissed off my father, who at the time was still funding his MBA, but it put his whole program in danger. But anyway, so he said, "Yeah, I'll stay." And so it so happened that he was standing on the push track when the whole Caswell thing broke, and he was no longer prepared to go. And Howard Silas said to George Fitch, "My question is, why isn't he?" And he pointed at my brother on the sled.
Yeah.
George's face went funny and he said, "Yeah, why isn't he on the sled?" So this is like 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and by 6, he had Olympic accreditation and we were roommates. And so that is the other George Fitch operation. That should be the subject of a whole book, because I don't know. Anyway, so George got him into the games onto the sled, except that he couldn't go over the side.
Yeah.
He refused to get on the bung at any speed. He would just run down the push track and run up the other side to the top of the hill, and then sit on the side and slide back down. So we said, this is not going to work in the race. So we put him on the back, which in reality is where he should be, because he was by far the fastest person there. And then, so that's how we got into the 4-man. So we successfully completed our training runs.
Okay.
And then we're in the race.
Okay. Unbelievable. And
Yeah.
and you mean your guys got organized that he got an accreditation on the same day where you decided we have a new team member?
Yeah, and Olympic accreditation closes like in I think you have the possibility to change, but you have to submit by the end of December. But then you have some leeway in January to make some changes depending.
Yeah.
But there is no accreditation once the game starts.
Yeah. And he moved into the Olympic Village and everything?
Yeah. They slept there that night.
Okay.
Yeah, it's completely insane.
I mean,
didn't even have trainers.
Listening to this story, I mean, you came there to start in the 2-man, and so how were you received by the big boys at the Olympics when they realized, okay, these Jamaicans, they're serious. They don't want to do any bullshit. They want to be in the race. So, I mean, who was it at the time? Russia or Soviet Union, Switzerland, Austria, East Germany, West Germany. So how were you received?
The thing that happened is that we were very famous in the rest of the world. And everybody there competed, knew it. And the family was badgering them for pins. You had to come back with something Jamaican. So everybody was very friendly. Right? They wanted a picture. In those days, it wasn't any digital or your camera. You had really cameras, ding, 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 and so on. So whatever resentment they may have felt, people were towards us, were very nice and kind, because they needed that piece of Jamaica to take back home, so they could have some peace and quiet once they got back. Even I remember one of our athletes exchanging pins with Hoppe, who to me was kind of like from another planet. Looking at him from afar and so on, and they were laughing and hugging and so on. So there wasn't any resentment, nothing. That all came later when we started to beat teams and became a real problem for a lot of nations, and then people started looking at us differently.
John Morgan told me the story because he was the commentator at this game, and he told me the story from some sort of media day where all the sleds and all the teams were lined up, and there was a big bunch of media and television people, and they were not with Hoppe, and they were not with Shara, and they were with you guys.
Yeah. I do remember that. Yeah.
How was that?
There's a picture of that which is like, you see all these sleds and all these athletes, and then you see all the cameras and the reporters bunched in one place. And everybody is standing around looking. But yeah.
And was there already some background with the International Federation that they thought, oh, such an exotic team with a big exposure all over the world, could help our
There,
sport? Was
there were people in there who were definitely sensitive to that and
okay.
wanted it because they saw that as the future of the sport. They knew they had a danger because all the time new sports are coming up.
Yeah.
There is a finite limit to what you can do in your games, how many athletes you can have, and so on.
Yeah.
And sports are being added, and occasionally a sport is dropped. And bobsleigh was in it was in that bucket,
Yeah.
and so they in a lot of ways that Jamaican participation and the follow-on cool runnings
Yeah.
really gave the FIBT renewed life,
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
which in ways has lasted till today. But now, they face new challenges.
So sorry, I had to jump back because I forgot it at the beginning. But now we are ready for the foreman race.
Yes,
Were you ready for the foreman race?
yes, I made myself ready because if you remember now, this is where my training came in, and the real value of having been a pilot in the military came from the need to figure out how to get into your performance state, into the right tension, regardless of your external circumstances and what is going on, and deal with situations that you are presented with. So, the hand-eye coordination and all those other things that the guys thought about were really not much help in bobsleigh. Yeah, no, it is a very different sort of coordination.
Yeah.
But the ability to concentrate and to be in the right frame of mind at the time, that was valuable and it was really tested. And if there's one expertise I've developed over time because of my bobsleigh career and subsequently, is really how to achieve and maintain a peak performance state regardless of the external circumstances and keep going at the optimum. So I had this in mind. The first run, we got out there and it was chaos at the start, and people will watch the start and they think that it's just guys not knowing what they're doing. But if you watch it closely, you will see that we pushed off from the block. We're driving. I went to enter the sled, transferred my weight to my push bar, and it collapsed right into the sled. So I ended up on my face and kind of on my backside on the side of the sled. So I went into the sled backwards, so facing back, feet in the air and so on, and somehow maneuvered around into my seat. In the meantime, first of the people couldn't get in the sled, and then once they started to get in, there wasn't much time. So it was just rush and a bung, like looked really like a circus.
Okay, we're talking about the race, day one.
The race, day one of the race, very first push in a four-man race.
Okay.
And in an Olympic Games, you can imagine the gravity of these things. And then your push bar collapses before you even get to the sled. So it would have been an ignominious end to Jamaica bobsleigh had I not gotten into the sled at that point in time. This is the one moment that, had it gone wrong, could not have been recovered.
Okay.
Now imagine if I'd collapsed on the ice and the sled had gone off down the track without a driver. Would have been a different kind of notoriety. Anyway, so we got in and we got there. It wasn't a great drive, as you can imagine, after all that excitement. But we came back up, we went a second time, and that was actually, if you look at the film now, quite a very good trip.
Okay.
But there were things that were, the sled was old. I forgot to mention that the sled was borrowed from the Canadians that were found it in the basement of the ice factory, the refrigeration units, which they had abandoned, and we thought we had put it together, but things on it were
and it really looked like something which was left there.
It did when we got it, but some guys volunteered to do a paid job in a garage in Calgary, and everybody wanted to get on board. So by the time we got to the line, it looked decent.
Okay.
And so that was the second run, and we had video technology, VHS tape, and you went down to the library and you checked out the VHS and you went over to the play and saw it, you popped it in and you found your run and we reviewed it in the night as a team. We determined to do better the next day.
Okay.
But So that Sunday now, the last day of the 4 man, I woke up and I had a fever over 100 degrees, and
Okay.
you know the Olympic bug. So I went to the track, and I was a bit unsteady. Anyway, walking the track before the race. At the time when you got in the track, I went up, came to going around curve 4, slipped and fell, and what happened, which I didn't exactly know at the time. I broke my
Yeah.
collarbone, and but I knew it was painful. Got to the top and saw the physio for the British team was a
Yeah.
guy named Brit. You know, we were friendly with. He'd been helping us a lot. So anyway, he put the magic sponge and various things on my shoulder. Didn't tell me anything too alarming.
Okay.
But I guess he knew it was obvious from looking what was going on. But he said,
Yeah.
"Hey, you still want to go? You feeding?" I said, "Fine." He said, "All right." And so I went out. And then, you know, we were at the start, we were early off. And we were waiting, we were on just behind the block waiting to go. And I was looking around for Howard Seiler, the coach. And George Fish noticed and came over and said, you know, Howard isn't here. And I said, what? He said, Howard, you know, he called me from the airport. He has to go back to work. And I said, what? But no, he'd always been at the start every time I had been there. And this is the guy who first put me on the ice and so on. I had a lot of faith invested in him. And so this was the worst moment of everything, was to hear
Okay.
that. But then there
So
was no,
it was not the fever, it was not your broken collarbone, what you didn't know at the
no.
moment, but your coach was not there.
I could have dealt with everything else, and had
Yeah.
in fact, you know, I've had experiences to deal with that. I couldn't. I had no experience in that kind of break in a relationship at a crucial moment, and what it could do psychologically. I really
Okay.
was a scramble, and it was a massive effort to pull myself together. And then we went off.
Mhm.
We pushed really fast
Yeah.
on that, and got in. But then, you know, we're going clean ice, big start, faster than I've ever been, and just got
Okay.
further and further behind the sled. And also the loading, because we had discussed being more compact, head down and so on from the day before. I was actually pinned in a seat, right? The athletes were literally on top of me as I was
Yeah.
trying to drive. So we went to the Chrysler, and the rest is history.
So you came up and you flipped it.
Yep.
What what went through your mind when you realized, so my runners are up in the air? What's going on here?
Yeah. The very first thought I had was not in the Olympic Games. And then a helmet crashed against the side of the wall,
Yeah.
which was probably the worst part of the crash, if you look back at it, because it was really quite high up on the wall, and it was a very strange crash. When they were doing the movie, they were trying to get some of the drivers up there, you know, the stunt drivers, to pull
Yeah.
off the crash again. And to a man, everybody refused. So that's why there's that actual footage in the movie. But not in the Olympics. Then I hit my head, and I think I
Yeah.
lost consciousness momentarily. Then
Okay.
I tried to get under the coat, but I was carrying the weight of the entire crew. Now was on top of me. Everybody was getting tight. And then suddenly we're up on another curve, and I hit my head again. And then when that happened the third time, I realized that I was not going to get under this coat. And so I relaxed. And in that moment, Ron, honestly, is when the absurdity of the whole thing came to me. What are we doing here? What is this? You know, this is not the way to do it. There's a right way to do it. And I was thinking to myself, you know, this can't end here. This can't end here. And that's when I decided in my mind to continue in bobsleigh and to become competitive. And the best bobsleigh I could possibly be was in the last 15, 18 seconds of that crash.
Really?
Yeah.
That really went through your mind. You were
Yeah.
already in the future.
Yes. And I immediately,
Unbelievable.
we walked up to the track to an ambulance to get checked. And my brother and I were sitting in the back of the ambulance. And I outlined to him the plan that I had made
Yeah.
in those moments, what we needed.
Really?
We need funding, we need equipment, we need exposure. We need to stay fit, and we'll bring in when I can. But I need to learn the sport and learn how to drive. That was all done right. The plan was made during the crash, and it was all settled within 15 minutes of the whole thing. And that's basically what we did for the rest of the time.
Because when you watch the pictures today, which you might have done a couple of times, that could have been your last day on your feet or your last day ever. Because your head was really badly bumped into the curves, into the walls. That didn't look good.
No, it was smashed somewhere between 5 and 7 times, depending on how you count, and then of course running around all along. It wasn't so much the strength of neck, which went. My neck was quite strong, unusually, because of football, and kind of my core competence in football was heading the ball. So I spent hours and hours and hours heading the football, and that developed certain strength, but also flexibility. And that was the difference there, I think, was the flexibility on my neck, because my neck hardly hurt. The only injury I walked away with from that crash was my broken collarbone, which happened before I got in the bump. But it could have, the probabilities would have been between death and permanent incapacitation. I remember a few years later meeting a lady who was a neurosurgeon who saw it on TV. And she said when I got up and walked away, that she was stunned and in complete shock, because she said there is no way this man would walk again, even if he's alive. Yeah. So in a way, that was probably a message that we can't quit this now. There's something here to be done.
A small part of this story is that there was this, interval because of your crash.
Yeah.
And there was this wind blowing there on that day. What is the name? Chinook?
The Chinook came in, yeah.
The Chinook.
I know.
And I think Wolfgang Hoppe wasn't so happy that you crashed.
No, it materially influenced the outcome of the race. And Fassa won, who was the sled that went off just before me. So I think that tells a lot of the story. That's not my proudest thought. I would not have wanted to have impacted a race in that way for guys who have been doing, spending all this time working up to this moment. But it happened. Fassa is a big fan of mine, so that might make up for.
So you met him again later?
Yeah. We've met a couple of times, and I think he of course knows what happened fully well. Yeah. So
he should have sent you a Christmas card every year.
Every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Dudley.
Yeah. But but it was, all of these feelings meant that we had to become something more than publicity gimmick kind of thing. We had to give the sport the respect that it deserves.
Yeah. Your journey went on. Albertville, Lillehammer, and even Nagano.
Yeah.
Where I commentated my first Olympic Games, and I was proud to commentate your last Olympic Games. But something else happened during this journey, because at some time somebody came to you guys and said, what happened with the movie?
No, George Fitch was already shopping the movie even before the Olympics started. So he was talking to producers and various people in Hollywood.
It was really, so he was really the guy who had the first idea, when he formed the team to bring it on the big screen, and then he already had some connections, and this worked out.
The entire idea of the Jamaican Bobsled team was to get a movie done. So George Fitch, growing up, his favorite movie was Downhill Skier with Robert Redford, and it was a movie directed by a guy named Richie. And it was about sort of the elite level skiing regime and how things are, and competing for the Olympics, and it's a great sport movie in his own right if you have a chance to see. But he loved that, and one of the people he was talking to was Richie, who was the guy who directed that. And at the end of the games, Richie bought the rights for the movie from George. Pretty much shortly after that, gave him $20,000 cash,
Okay.
and had bought the rights for not permanently, but bought
Okay.
some time,
Yeah.
and said he'd see what he can do. As it turned out, what he did was we had some calls, conference calls. One of them I remember was 4 hours. We told him all sorts of stories. He wrote a script, but then he shot that around, and then in about a year later, just before things were to expire, he sold the script to Disney for $200,000.
Okay.
Which is a neat piece of business. And then so now Disney had this. And George was excited that Disney bought it and paid that kind of cash, because he thought this was a better thing. But Disney was in turmoil at the time. And I think the CEO was leaving. All sorts of things were happening. Nothing happened with the movie for a while. And the story of how it got made is also very interesting. It brings in a couple of characters as well. Dawn Steele, who is not so well known. She's the first woman to head a major studio in Hollywood when she was appointed head of Columbia. But she came from Paramount, which was the number one studio at that time in the 80s and so on. And at Paramount, she was there where a guy, Barry Diller, who went on to own Comcast and so on, multi-billionaire in the States. But Barry Diller was head of Paramount, and he had his proteges, Eisner, Katzenberg, and Dawn Steele. And these were his producers, and she did movies like, When Harry Met Sally and so on. She was involved in massive movies at Paramount. And then Diller left to go and do his own thing, and he told them all, that, they need to pursue their careers. So Eisner and Katzenberg went to Disney, which was imploding. And Dawn Steele went to Columbia as the first woman to head a major studio. If you read her autobiography, she got there. Coca-Cola owned it. She got there. Sony bought it, and the Japanese were less than impressed with a woman at the head of this thing. And eventually, she was invited to leave. So she left suddenly with nothing to do. She formed her own production company. She became an independent. She had no work. So she went to look up her former colleagues, Eisner and Katzenberg. So Eisner was in charge, said to her that we're trying to get a grip of this thing. We don't know what's going on. I don't know how much it can help you. But, talk to Katzenberg and see what to do. So she went there. So Katzenberg said, hands full doing this, that, the other. But listen, in the basement, they have this filing cabinet in which they have about 13 scripts in it, and I can't make out what to do with them. Go down there, and if you can find anything that you can make work, take it out. And she looked in this thing, and she took out 2 scripts. One of which eventually the movie was with Whoopi Goldberg's sister. I can never remember the name of this movie, but Whoopi Goldberg as unknown, a huge hit. And the second one was codenamed Blue Maga, which became Cool Runnings. So
what was the first title they thought?
Blue Maga was the production name.
Okay, I see. Okay.
That's the name it was known as until, the marketers and so on figured things out. As you know, it has a different name in every country. Rasta Rocket in France.
Okay.
But yeah, so she had it, and she made it. And at the time that she wrote her autobiography, she couldn't even include the name of the movie in it. But when she spoke about, trying to get the cast, and the fact that John Candy took a pay cut to be in that show, and that kind of made it for her, because now she had a headline name.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much you know about the movie business, Ron. I know way more than I would have liked to, because of the experience with Cool Runnings. But movies are seen as vehicles for actors.
Okay.
And so, when you have a script, you have to say which actor will carry this. and the first one they had in mind was Denzel Washington. Of course, Disney quickly shut her down. They don't have that kind of money to spend. Anyway, she got a budget for a leading person, and John Candy did that movie at well under his going price.
Okay.
Just out of how he just liked the story. And so she, she made it within 3 years. She died in 1997 from a brain tumor. And John Candy, of course, left Cool Runnings set, went to Mexico, and died on the set of that movie, right? So yeah. So in a lot of ways, this was their last hurrah. And at the end of the day, sort of sitting here 30 odd years later, it was well done. It translates very well to today. It's still watchable. It's dealing with sensitive topics, but stood the test of time. I mean, literally, grandparents are showing this to their grandchildren now, having watched it themselves, brought up the children on it, and now the grandchildren are watching it. It was fabulously done. The fact that they could have created something that would stand this long.
When you guys sold the rights, Hollywood took over.
No, when Dawn Steele decided to do it, she came to Calgary. In fact, we were in Calgary training, and she came to Calgary and sat down with my brother and I for an extended brunch. So she had her assistant with her writing furiously, and she just said, "Tell your story. What happened? What happened?" And so we spoke for like 3 hours and a bit, and then she said, "I'm going to make you guys famous," and that's the last I saw of her. But so we did have input, and she, very cleverly the writers pulled facts like the confrontation between the two characters, the father and the son, of him dropping out of school. That was based on the story of my brother coming to watch a race and staying and end up with the foreman on his head, almost killed, according to my mother.
Okay.
Then,
the pushcart thing is real.
The pushcart thing.
The pushing on an ice ring is real.
Yeah.
So, and what are the biggest differences?
Well, nobody picked up the foreman's head and carried it across the finish line. And you would realize for obvious reasons why that didn't happen. So, but
it's a nice scene, and everyone was touched, and some people cried. So it was a good scene, yeah.
Yes, they were looking for that, and they got it. Sort of the mechanics were different. They compressed the whole qualification situation and everything happening in Calgary.
Well, it still has its impact, and it became a Christmas movie all over the world.
Yeah, no, but it's streamed, and I'm sure that it is watched a lot.
Can you imagine what happened if they didn't done the movie? So you think you were there where you are now?
The movie, in many ways, saved the program because after 88, and then we stayed in between that time. I really learned to drive a bobsleigh. That's when I met Sepp Heidacher, the Austrian who you would know, very, very famous in bobsleigh circles. In many ways, the father of Jamaica bobsleigh. And he was the one who designed the nitty-gritty. He was experienced with the Austrian junior teams and developing them. So he met me in Eagles wandering around the track and sat me down and explained how you get good at this thing. And then helped right through then right up till his incapacitation. So Sepp, was with me through 89, going into 92. And we were practically Austrians. We were trained and traveled with the Austrian team, did everything. In 92, that's where Ingo Appelt had his goal in the foreman. But person I got to know very well and talk about the sport and so on because we were in so many places together. But our performance in 92 wasn't spectacular. We didn't crash, but we were like mid of the table, which There were reasons for that, but it created not much excitement, and
Yeah.
the hype around the team was dying down. So if you remember, 92 Abbeville, 94 was Lillehammer,
Yeah.
because they were switching the games
Yeah.
into what is the World Cup year for the Winter Olympics, as opposed to having two Olympic games in the
Yeah.
same year. So we only had one season between, in which I had no cash. I had to borrow 5,000 from a friend, and then flew to Lillehammer and stayed with another friend, Tron Upland, who was a teammate of my brother Track in Idaho. And Tron had he came to bobsleigh because of us, and he was the track manager in Lillehammer. So I went and stayed with him, and he arranged for me to go on the track at all sorts of odd hours, strange times, and so on. But I spent a good, I would say, almost 4 weeks in the winter, in sort of early '93, on the Lillehammer track,
Okay.
which was invaluable experience. No good sled, no runners or anything, just learning and learning the idiosyncrasies. And then I went back home, and we had no cash, we had nothing, but we were moving along in faith more than anything else. We selected we had trials again, the biggest trials since the very first one that we had unearthed, two really top class athletes to go along with my brother Chris. So you had Wayne Thomas and Winston Watt, who were just physical specimens. And suddenly we had a competitive team. We knew we'd be competitive, at least at the start. We just didn't have any money or any equipment or anything. And this is when October 3rd, I think, 1993, Cool Runnings premiered, and all of that changed. Within minutes after the close of the premiere in Jamaica, I had 60,000 US from the head of Red Stripe Beer in Jamaica. And he just came up to me right in the cinema and pledged it.
Really? Cash?
Well, it was a check. He said, come to my
Okay.
office tomorrow. And I went there, and sure enough, the check was waiting for me. And he was in a meeting, but his secretary, oh, yes, Mr. Stokes. And
Yeah.
there we were.
Okay.
Could have been bigger, except that when he asked me, how much do you need? I very truthfully said to him, 60 grand based on it. And he said, all right, come fine. I said, well, 100,000 with it. Don't try that with me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And back to what Disney finally paid, or whoever, I mean, you got the money from. That was a one-time payment, or were you still, involved in?
So Disney, so they bought the rights for the movie, for 200,000, but then they still had to pay the people involved. So they had a payment structure that was $250,000 for a budget under 12 million. And if they went above 12 million, that payment would go to 300,000.
Yeah.
And which eventually happened. I think the final spend was 15 million. And so 300,000 went to the people involved who had to sign off, were 16 people, and it was split up into very tiny amounts.
Right.
But then one of the final clauses in the contract was 2% of net profit.
Okay.
And when I read, this is many years later, and in fact, during the era of COVID, I finally acquired and read Don Steele's autobiography. And very interesting person. So previous to getting into the movie business, she was the merchandising manager for Penthouse magazine, selling all sorts of things for them. And she did a deal with Penthouse for a percentage of net profit. So she did well. She sold a lot of stuff, and she went to the owner for her profit, and he sent her to the accountant who did the math and told her she owes them $200,000, which she flipped out and so on. So anyway, her mother, who was an accountant, said to her that there is no profit in business, so you can't make a deal on that. Well, she learned that lesson, because right there in the contract was 2% of net profit. That was what was going to make us rich. But that at last, the last time I checked, Cool Runnings had lost about $40 million, and that's creative accounting. This is when I really got to know the movie business and understand what they're allowed to do in accounting, and it is quite creative.
John Morgan says he got the payment each and every year, so you don't.
No, we haven't gotten since the base thing. But he probably had somebody who knew what they were doing and negotiated a completely different contract.
How's the situation with the Jamaican Bob team at the moment?
Pretty good, I'd say. Certainly the best since I retired. They have an adequately organized program. Todd Hayes is at the head of it. He's very, very experienced and competent, and so they pulled together a decent program and had some good results. Shane has responded to that, and he's done pretty well.
What is the problem? What is? I mean, is it just the budget, or is it? I mean, are the best, or are some of the best track and field guys on the bobsleigh team, or is there no chance to get these guys because they all want to become Usain Bolt?
Yeah, but you don't want the best track and field athletes. They are. Remember in Jamaica, if you are a sprinter, you are and you are number 7.
Yeah,
you're probably number 1 everywhere else in the world, but you're number 7. You will never be in Olympic Games or anything. So there are tons of those people walking around. The other thing for bobsleigh is that you want a particular kind of athlete. So you want a Wayne Thomas, a Winston Watt sort of athlete who has a bone structure, can carry solid muscle all around, still has the speed, but then can develop the explosiveness. And so, and then of course you need the mental attitude, which is very hard to find. So we have long since determined that the top athletes are not who you're interested in, but there's a great pool of athletes under that who would be more than adequate. But it's sifting through and finding ones with kind of the mindset that can stay the course and so on. People who are accustomed to grabbing a pair of spikes and in the shorts, go down to the track, put on the spikes and run 100 meters. When you tell them you have to lift it, sled, clean these runners, polish, blah, this is an 18-hour-a-day job.
Yeah.
You lose a lot of people. Yeah. And then you lose a lot of people, of course, from what we had a discussion recently about the ice house beast. And these are the guys who have all the records in the ice house, and you put them at the top of Whistler and they're shaking like a leaf. It happens. This is not a fun sport, except when you stop at the end of a run and you have a brief moment where you can savor the feeling, and then it's back to the grind and the danger, and you're always beat up and you may be burnt up, and it's just miserably. You stop in March and you don't feel your toes and your fingers until the end of June. Then you start again in October. This is not for everybody, Ron.
I know it. I've done it a bit on a very amateur level, but I've done most of my runs in Altenburg.
Yeah.
And at Kreisel, I already regretted that I jumped in this bobsleigh, because then it's not fun anymore.
No.
Yeah. And this, what you were saying, when you are in the finish, this runners or bobsleigh high, this is only this bit.
Yeah, that's
because when you're at the top again, then you're starting to shake again before the next run, and it's not fun. The question is, would the Jamaican bobsleigh team have a chance with the right budget, the right tools, to be with the big boys, top of the world?
Absolutely. What the difference making now is really going to be down to competition experience. It's still getting into races, getting on the World Cup circuit, racing week in, week out, learning the different tracks and so on, and just building some resilience into the basic bobsleigh abilities. Already, like even this team that will be in Cortina, already they're physically good enough. They will be starting very fast. Not as fast as the fastest guys, but they will have that in them with another 2 or 3 years, I think. But it is a lot down to the money that you have to spend. Now, as of now, the whole qualification situation changes, which I don't think people are adequately aware of, not just in Jamaica, but Jamaica would probably be in this boat, but in other nations involved in bobsleigh, because the next games will be decided only on World Cup finishes.
Okay.
So
no more qualification on the North America Cup and stuff?
No.
Okay.
Only on the World Cup circuit.
Okay.
So every program
this is different.
Yeah. Every program now has to be targeted to be on the World Cup, and it is a combined rankings on the World Cup circuit. So 4 and 2 man on the World Cup. So you can imagine what a pressure cooker that's going to be.
But the good thing now is that the development goes absolutely back from the old days, where André Lange used to do luge. Florschutz, the Olympic medalist, used to do luge. Gabi Kolisch, first ever world champion in women's bobsleigh, she did luge. So they teach luge, men and girls, to run. But now Gerd Leopold says, no, we need fast people, and we teach them driving. This is it. And this is something which speaks absolutely for Jamaica, because you have the guys.
Yeah. So, yes, you get fast people and teach them how to drive. But my personal idea, and this is not by no means exclusive, because I have seen and have worked with, and I'm working with a driver now from Brazil who didn't start as a brakeman, but is a very powerful athlete, and I think has a big future. Gustavo dos Santos Ferreira. Remember that name, because you're going to hear it in the future. But the reliable way to do this is to take your brakemen from the minute they're at the highest level and they qualify, and at the end of every season, you put them on the track and you put them in the monobob, and they drive, and very soon you'll see who has a feel for it and who doesn't. And then the guys who have a feel for it, you bring them back in an Olympic cycle, so they're driving a bit every year. And then, at the most important time in an Olympic cycle run is the weeks immediately after the Olympic Games. This is where, in a lot of ways, the following Olympics are decided. So you need to get on the ice, even though bobsleigh is the last thing you want to see. Certainly, you break the guys you've identified and bringing through. They need to start the driving career here now, in this period, right after the Olympic Games, and then it is a question of how many times you can throw them down the track, and then how they. And it's not complicated, but it is difficult. And then, but this is the future. There will be no more non-athletes in the front of the sled, who have learned to run a little bit and so on. The people in the front of the sled are going to primarily come from the back, or you're going to be able to pick up a particular type of athlete off the back, but that is almost like a Hail Mary situation. The reliable way to build your bobsleigh is to identify pushers who have the potential to drive from early in the pushing career, and then move them on. Although I hear that Gerd now has a youngster who is who's shaping up very well, and he's started from Youth Olympics coming up. And but and that's what I hear. But he told me personally that he's retiring for sure now after these games. But he's told me that every time I've met him, he's retiring, but he's still there.
Okay. Would there be the possibility that somebody else is, fulfilling your big dream when you went to the Olympics? I mean, your dream was actually to take part, be a part of it, and so I think you never dreamt of getting a medal in Calgary. But I mean, to see a Jamaican one day, maybe in 4 years, to have the real chance to be there on top, at least fighting for a medal.
Yes, it's absolutely possible. So a couple of things. One of the things that I realized that had gone through my mind during those seconds after the crash when I was planning the sport, but I didn't quite understand it. But this realization came over me gradually afterwards. Is that one of the things that was being said in certain circles when we were trying to do the team in '87 and '88? Is that Black people can't drive a bobsleigh. That was a sentiment in certain places, and it was being said, and I was aware of that because I'd come across it in flying and in military and training overseas and so on. There's always a thing or a surprise when you were able to do things. So one of the reasons why I couldn't leave it after '88 is because that would have been kind of proof of this sort of conversation. So that's one of the things that sustained me over the years when we were struggling along. But then subsequent to that, with my retirement, of course, a lot of Black people have gotten into the front of sleds. The women have excelled, I think it's fair to say. And the men haven't done nearly as well as I thought they would have by this point in time. So absolutely, a Jamaican in medal positions is not a pipe dream. It's a distinct possibility. Things are put together and executed in a realistic, consistent way over time. It will happen. And there are others, other people that I think need to step up and come through as well. But they in Lillehammer, where we finished 14th overall, 10th on the last 2 runs and so on, that's still the best finish by a Black male driver in Olympic history. And that needs to change this is well over a quarter century.
Okay, it sounds like a nice story when some people who are, basically standing on your shoulders because you pioneered everything from 1988 over the years. So I could fulfill this dream.
Yes, I'm the father of Black people in the driving seat of a bobsleigh.
Maybe already the grandfather.
Yeah, could be. But it would have happened eventually, but it happened in this point and in this time, the opportunity that came my way, and then there were things we needed to do to realize it. But I was and always will be the first. And then I was shocked in 2018, when we met in Pyeongchang, and I'd been away from the sport for, like a decade and a half at that point. And the number of bobsledders of all nations had eventually said to me that the reason I'm in this sport, and huge stars, people from every nation, Germany and Switzerland, everywhere, and their first real memory of bobsleigh was watching Cool Runnings.
Yeah.
And that's what brought them to the sport. And that is incredible to me.
Yeah. And wherever you go and you say, well, I'm involved a bit in bobsleigh, and they say, what? And you say, cool runnings.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. And Leo still doesn't call you guys Bob Team Jamaica. He still calls you Cool Runnings. I went with Cool
yeah.
Runnings to Nagano. Cool Runnings were giving autographs and interviews, and so he's still
Yes.
saying, Cool Runnings. Okay, what have you done in the last years? What was the impact of all the story into your later life? You were writing a book. You're holding speeches, motivational speeches, or what is it?
No, I spent sort of 20 years being very intensely involved in businesses, building big businesses, employing a lot of people, bearing a lot of pressure, and I'm missing. I quit bobsleigh to spend more time with my children, and I didn't. And so things got very intense, and we sort of slowed it down in the mid 2010s, and I started to well, I wanted really a one-man operation. So I have a list of what I wanted our business, what I did to look like, and I'm kind of pursuing this now. But the main focus is around simple, inexpensive, effective, and sustainable tools and techniques to achieve and sustain peak performance, maintain your long-term health, and set and achieve your goals in life. And to that end, I'm working with individuals, and then sort of a lot with companies on I wouldn't say ad hoc, but on a interventionist basis, coming in for specific situations and working with them through that. And basically just using my life experience, but also my bobsleigh experience, which begins with educating people on what that experience was, because the downside of cool running is that people think that is true.
Yeah.
So you have to educate people on that, take them through, and then when I find that if I'm able to speak to somebody one-on-one, but not for very long, then I'm able to convince them that I can go in and make a difference. A couple of athletes I've worked with that are in Cortina right now, so I'm watching them with bated breath to see where they go. And there are a couple of youngsters that I work with specifically in bobsleigh. And then but then all sorts of people, entrepreneurs, business people. My first ever customer when I started this was my mother, who is now, she's 85, and in the last 10 years, she started three businesses that are all thriving. Yes.
Okay.
So they including one in the middle of COVID when everybody was tearing their hair out. So it's interesting work. I think is a niche that is necessary, and I plan to build this out as far as I can go with it.
I've now stolen so much time from you, and I could have gone on for another 2 hours with all of your stories you can tell. But I have to be on the football place in 40 minutes.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure you have other things to do, including, taking care of your cat.
All right.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate that you took the time. Thanks a lot. I hope I can make something of it. And well, maybe we find a way to help Jamaica, achieve those goals, what you dreamt of. Thanks a lot, man. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.